The graveyard shift is a special kind of purgatory. For the past 3 years, I've been a security guard at the corporate headquarters of a massive, soulless data processing company called Verisync. The building is a 20-story monument to beige, a silent glass and steel tomb from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. My job is to walk its empty corridors, a ghost in a blue uniform, making sure the other ghosts in the machine stay put. The silence is the hardest part. It's a thick, pressurized silence that makes you hear things. The hum of the server farms on the 12th floor, the groan of the building settling, the frantic beat of your own heart when a floorboard creaks a little too loudly. But the real trial isn't the shift itself, it's the journey home. My commute is the 4:17 a.m. train on the city's oldest metro line, the Red Line. It's a rattling, flickering beast that slithers through the city's dark underbelly when only the lost and the lonely are awake. Most nights, the train is my sanctuary of solitude. A handful of other night shift workers, cleaners, and insomniacs are scattered across its length, each respecting an unspoken vow of silence. We are islands, adrift in the humming, swaying carriage, our faces lit by the ghostly glow of our phones. It was a Tuesday in late October, the kind of night where the air has a sharp metallic bite that promises a bitter winter. I was in my usual seat in the third car from the front, the one with the persistent flicker in the overhead light and the faint sour smell of damp wool. The car was mostly empty. There was a woman in a Mensa's uniform a few seats ahead, asleep with her head against the window. Further down, a young man in a hoodie was hunched over, his face a blank, illuminated slate. And then there was the man directly across from me, a tired-looking office worker in a slightly rumpled suit, his briefcase resting on his knees.
He looked like 1,000 other mid-level managers I'd seen come and go from Verisync, balding, a bit soft around the middle, his face etched with a permanent sort of weary disappointment. He was staring blankly at the dark window, his reflection a transparent ghost superimposed over the rushing tunnel wall. I didn't pay him much mind. I just put in my earbuds, leaned my head back, and closed my eyes, letting the familiar clatter of the tracks lull me. But you never really sleep on the 4 a.m. train. You just rest. Your senses are still on a low-level alert. That's how I noticed it. It wasn't a sound, it was a movement, a flicker in my peripheral vision from the next car over, visible through the connecting doorway. I opened my eyes and looked. The next car, car number 4, was supposed to be empty. It usually was, but it wasn't. There was a man sitting in the exact same spot I was, just one car down. Same side, same distance from the door. And as I watched, my blood turning to ice water, he mirrored the man across from me, perfectly. The man in my car, the tired office worker, slowly lifted a hand to rub his weary eyes. A second later, with an almost imperceptible delay, the man in the other car did the exact same thing. The same hand, the same slow circular motion, the same tired slump of his shoulders afterward. My mind instantly started scrambling for an explanation. A reflection? No, the angle was all wrong. The lighting was different. This was a separate person in a separate space. Twins, then? An incredible, bizarre coincidence? Maybe they were playing a game, a silent prank on the handful of exhausted passengers. I watched, my heart thumping a heavy, dull rhythm against my ribs. The man in my car sighed, a faint puff of condensation clouding the air. His shoulders sagged. 1 beat, 2 beats. In the other car, the second man sighed, his shoulders slumping, in perfect, delayed mimicry.
It was like watching an echo in the flesh, an echo that was just a little out of sync. And the most chilling part? The man in the other car, he looked identical to the first man. Same suit, same balding head, same weary posture. It was him, but not him. A copy, a perfect, horrifying duplicate. My breath hitched in my throat. I was no longer in my familiar, lonely sanctuary. I was in a cage with a ghost, or 2 of them. My first instinct was to bolt, to get up, run to the other end of the train, and put as much distance as possible between myself and whatever this was. But I was frozen, pinned to my seat by a mixture of terror and a morbid, powerful curiosity. My security training kicked in, a detached, analytical part of my brain taking over. Observe, assess, don't panic. I focused on the man in my car, the original. He seemed completely oblivious. He was now staring down at his briefcase, his fingers tracing the worn leather handle. I forced my gaze to the doorway of the next car. The Echo was doing the same, his fingers tracing the handle of an identical briefcase, but his head was angled just slightly more towards me. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible difference, but I saw it. He knew I was watching. The knowledge hit me not as a thought, but as a physical sensation, a cold dread that started in my gut and spread through my limbs. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a coincidence. This was for me. I needed to break the spell, to do something that couldn't be mimicked. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers slick with sweat. The plan was to pretend to take a call, to create an unpredictable action. I held the phone to my ear, my voice a dry croak. "Hello? Yeah, I'm on my way." The man in my car didn't even flinch. He was lost in his own world. But the Echo slowly lifted his head. He didn't raise a phone to his ear. Instead, his eyes, dark and empty, met mine through the grimy window of the connecting door. He held my gaze for a long, terrifying second.
And then he smiled. It was a small, tight, unnatural smile. A smile that didn't reach his eyes. A smile that said, "I see you." Panic, cold and sharp, finally broke through my training. I stood up so quickly my knees knocked against the seat in front of me. I turned my back on them both and walked, not ran, to the next car, moving towards the front of the train. I didn't look back. The nurse was still asleep. The kid in the hoodie hadn't moved. I stepped through the sliding door into car number 2. It was empty. A wave of relief washed over me, so potent it made me dizzy. I sank into a seat, my back to the car I just left, and took a deep, shuddering breath. It was a hallucination. That had to be it. Sleep deprivation, the flickering lights, the oppressive silence of my job, it had all conspired to create a waking nightmare. I laughed, a short, choked sound. Twins playing a prank. Of course. How stupid I was to be so scared. I closed my eyes, trying to force my heart rate back to normal. The train rattled on, the rhythmic clatter a comforting, mechanical heartbeat. 1 stop. 2 stops. No one got on. No one got off. I started to feel safe again. My paranoia began to feel ridiculous. After a few minutes, I convinced myself I had imagined the whole thing. The smile, the identical movements. It was just a trick of the light, of a tired mind. But I had to be sure. I had to prove to myself that I was just tired, not losing my mind. Slowly, cautiously, I turned my head to look towards the back of the train. I didn't look directly at car 3, where I'd been sitting. Instead, I looked at the doorway between car 3 and car 4, the car where the Echo had been. The doorway was empty. A hollow laugh escaped me. See? Nothing. Just an overactive imagination. But then my eyes drifted to the windows of car 4 itself, the car beyond the one the Echo had been in. My relief curdled into pure, unadulterated horror.
Car 4 was no longer empty. A man was sitting there, in the same seat, in the same rumpled suit. He was staring straight ahead, but I knew with a certainty that defied all logic that it was the Echo. He had moved. He had skipped a car. He had followed me. He had gotten closer. And then, as if to confirm my deepest fears, he slowly turned his head, his movements deliberate and unnatural, and his dead eyes locked directly onto mine from 2 cars away. The smile returned, wider this time. It was a predator smile, and I was his prey. The train wasn't a sanctuary. It was his hunting ground. The world seemed to shrink until it was just me and him, me and the impossible man in car 4. The rhythmic clatter of the tracks, which had been so comforting moments before, now sounded like a countdown. My mind was a whirlwind of frantic, useless thoughts. Who was he? What did he want? Was he a ghost? A demon? Some kind of living doppelganger? The rational part of my brain, the security guard, tried to reassert control. There had to be an explanation. There had to be. I fumbled for my phone again, my hand shaking so badly I almost dropped it.
I needed proof. I needed to record this, to show someone that I wasn't insane. I opened the camera app, the little screen, a tiny, stable window in a world that was tilting on its axis. I held it up, trying to steady my hand, and zoomed in on the figure in car 4. The digital zoom was grainy, pixelated, but it was him, the suit, the head, the posture. I pressed the red record button. The small timer began to tick up, 001, 002, 003. I held my breath, waiting for him to move, to do something that the camera could capture. The echo just sat there, that horrific, knowing smile plastered on his face. He wasn't moving. He was just watching me, watch him. The original man in car 3 was still, as far as I could tell, oblivious. He was a prop, a piece of bait.
Suddenly, the lights in my car flickered violently, then went out, plunging me into near total darkness. The phone screen became a blinding beacon. My heart hammered against my ribs. A moment later, the emergency lights kicked in, casting the car in a sickly red glow. The train, which had been rattling along at a steady pace, began to slow down. A high-pitched screech of metal on metal filled the air. This wasn't a scheduled stop. I knew every inch of this line. We were in the middle of the longest tunnel on the route, the Blackwood Cut, a 2-mile stretch of absolute darkness. The train groaned to a complete stop. The emergency lights flickered again, their red glare making everything look like a scene from an abattoir. The silence that followed was even more profound and terrifying than the silence in my office building. It was a dead silence, a tomb-like silence. My recording was still running. I kept the phone pointed towards the back of the train, my arm aching. I could no longer see the echo. The angle was wrong, and the red light didn't penetrate that far. But I knew he was there. I could feel his presence, a cold weight in the air. Then I heard it, a soft pneumatic hiss, the sound of the train doors. But they weren't supposed to open here, not in the middle of a tunnel. I looked to my left. The doors of my car, car 2, were sliding open. A rectangle of pure, featureless blackness appeared, a void where the station platform should have been. A cold, damp, earthy smell, like a freshly dug grave, wafted into the car. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just a stop, it was an invitation. Then I saw movement in car 3. Through the doorway, I could see the original man, the office worker, standing up. He moved with a stiff, jerky motion, like a puppet whose strings were being pulled. His face was blank, his eyes wide and unfocused. He wasn't looking at the open doors in his own car. He was looking forward, towards me. He began to walk, his steps slow and deliberate, moving from car 3 into my car. He walked right past me, his eyes fixed on the open doorway and the abyss beyond. He smelled of stale coffee and fear. The nurse in front of me was awake now, her eyes wide with confusion. "What's happening?" she whispered. But I couldn't answer. I could only watch as the man, the original man, walked without hesitation to the edge of the car and stepped out into the blackness. There was no sound, no scream, no thud. He just vanished. He was gone. My gaze snapped back to the doorway to car 4, and in the deep red gloom, I saw him, the echo. He was standing now, and he was no longer smiling. His face was a mask of cold, triumphant hunger. He took one step forward, into car 3, the car the original had just left. He was taking his place, and I knew, with a chilling, soul-deep certainty, that he was coming for me next. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to run, but where? Forward to the driver's cabin? Back towards the thing that was hunting me? My feet felt like they were nailed to the floor. The echo took another slow, deliberate step, moving through car 3 with an unnatural grace. He was closing the distance. The nurse let out a small, terrified whimper. The kid in the hoodie was finally looking up, his face a mask of disbelief. They saw him now. They had to. "Did you see that?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper, not daring to take my eyes off the approaching figure. The man, he just walked out. The nurse just stared, her knuckles white where she gripped the seat. The echo was at the threshold of my car now, a dark silhouette against the deeper darkness of the tunnel. The red emergency lights glinted off something in his eyes, a spark of malevolent intelligence. The faint grave-like smell was stronger now. It was coming from him.
He paused there, just for a second, as if savoring the moment.
My phone was still in my hand, still recording. I had proof. The thought was a tiny flicker of hope in a tidal wave of terror. If I got out of this, I wouldn't be the crazy guy who hallucinated on the night train. I would be the survivor. That tiny flicker of hope was all I needed. It broke the paralysis. My training, my years of walking silent, empty halls had prepared me for this one thing. When you can't fight and you can't flee, you create a new option. My eyes darted around the car and landed on the emergency brake lever. It was encased in a small glass box with a small metal hammer chained to the wall beside it. It was a relic, a manual system that probably hadn't been used in 50 years. Below it, small print read, "For emergency use only, penalty for improper use." I didn't hesitate. I lunged towards it, my movements clumsy with adrenaline. The Echo saw my intent. His fluid grace shattered, and he surged forward, his speed shockingly fast. He was no longer walking, he was flowing, pouring himself across the floor of the car. It was the most unnatural thing I had ever seen, like watching a CGI effect in real life. I grabbed the small hammer, my hand closing around the cold metal. I swung it with all my strength at the glass box. The glass shattered with a sharp crack that echoed in the dead silence of the tunnel. The Echo was halfway down the car now, his face contorted into a snarl of fury. His features seemed to be shifting, melting, losing their human form. The illusion was breaking. I reached in, ignoring the shards of glass that sliced into my hand, and grabbed the thick red handle of the brake. I pulled down with every ounce of my weight. For a second, nothing happened. Then, a deafening screech tore through the train, a shriek of tortured metal. The entire carriage shuddered violently, throwing me against the wall. The emergency lights flared, becoming a brilliant, blinding white.
The kid in the hoodie yelped as he was thrown from his seat. The nurse screamed. The Echo, caught mid-stride, was thrown off balance. He staggered, his form flickering like a bad TV signal, the face of the office worker momentarily replaced by a vortex of swirling, featureless gray. He let out a sound, not a human sound, but a high-pitched digital shriek like a corrupted audio file. It was a sound of pure rage and agony. He raised a hand towards me, his fingers elongating into thin black talons, and then the main power of the train roared back to life. The normal lights buzzed on, bright and unforgiving. The ventilation system kicked in, and the train gave a powerful lurch forward, then another as the system tried to reset itself. The forward motion was a jolt, a final, violent shudder. I was sprawled on the floor, my hand bleeding, my heart feeling like it was trying to beat its way out of my chest. The world came back into focus slowly. The nurse was helping the kid up. A few other passengers, roused by the chaos from other cars, were peering through the doorways, their faces a mixture of alarm and annoyance. I pushed myself up, my eyes scanning the car frantically. He was gone. The Echo was gone. The open doorway to the tunnel was now closed, the thick rubber seals pressed tightly together. The car was just a normal train car again. I looked down at my phone. The screen was black. The battery had died. The recording was gone. What the hell was that? A man in a conductor's uniform demanded, storming into the car. Who pulled the brake? All eyes turned to me. I was standing there, hand bleeding, next to the shattered glass box. There was a man, I began, my voice hoarse. Another man walked out of the Moor, into the tunnel, and something was chasing me. The conductor gave me a look of pure, unadulterated contempt. Open door? The doors are on a proximity lock. They can't open between stations. He pointed a thumb at the nurse.
"Ma'am, did you see a door open?" The nurse hesitated, her eyes flicking from the conductor to me. She looked terrified, but not of what I had seen. She was terrified of the official in front of her, of the hassle, of being involved. "No," she said, her voice small. "The train just stopped, and she pointed at me. "He started screaming and smashed that box." The conductor's eyes narrowed. "I see." The lie hung in the air, thick and suffocating. No one had seen it, or no one was willing to admit they had. They just saw me, a crazy man on a late-night train, babbling about open doors and men who walked into the dark. The Echo was gone, but he had won. He hadn't taken my body. He had taken my sanity. I was, of course, fired. There was an investigation, a formal inquiry by the transit authority. I was drug tested, given a psychological evaluation, and ultimately fined for misuse of railway property and causing a major service disruption. My story never changed. I told them about the two men, the mimicry,
the unscheduled stop, the open door, the thing that chased me. I recounted it all in a calm, flat voice, which I think only made me sound more deranged to them. The official report concluded that I had suffered a psychotic break due to occupational stress and sleep deprivation. My union rep fought for me, but it was no use. The nurse's testimony and the lack of any corroborating witnesses sealed my fate. The absence of evidence was their proof. There was no record of the train store's opening, no sign of the original man, the office worker. I searched for him, obsessively. I scoured missing person reports and news archives for weeks. Nothing. It was as if he had never existed. I tried to find the nurse, to confront her, to ask her why she lied, but she was a ghost too. I had no name, no way of tracking her down. I was alone with my impossible memory. The first few months were a blur of paranoia and fear.
I couldn't ride the train anymore. I couldn't even look at a subway entrance with my heart seizing up. I took to walking everywhere, even in the rain and the cold. I avoided crowds, but I also avoided being alone. I slept with the lights on. Every reflection was a potential threat. I would catch a glimpse of myself in a shop window, and my breath would catch in my throat, half expecting my reflection to be a second or two behind my actual movements. It never was. But the fear that one day it would be was a constant, gnawing presence. I started to doubt myself, to wonder if the doctors were right. Was it all in my head? A stress-induced hallucination of terrifying detail and consequence? It was easier to believe that than to believe that the world had such monsters hiding in its seams. I started to get better. I found a new job, a daytime gig stocking shelves at a grocery store. The mindless, physical work was therapeutic. The bright lights and constant presence of other people were a balm to my frayed nerves. The memory of the train began to feel distant, like a nightmare you can barely recall upon waking. The fear receded, replaced by a dull, lingering unease. And then, one evening, it happened again. I was walking home from work, the sun setting, casting long shadows across the street. I was waiting to cross a busy intersection. I glanced at the large plate glass window of the office building on the corner. It was a mirror, reflecting the bustling street scene. Cars, pedestrians, a cyclist weaving through traffic. And in that reflection, I saw him. Not the office worker. It was a young woman with a bright pink backpack, waiting for the light to change. And standing right next to her reflection was another identical young woman, a perfect copy, also with a pink backpack. As the real woman shifted her weight from one foot to the other, the copy did the same, just a fraction of a second later.
My blood turned to ice. It wasn't over. It had never been over. I hadn't been the random target of a single entity. I had just been the one who had seen it. I had pulled back the curtain, and now I couldn't unsee the machinery working behind the scenes. I looked away from the reflection, my heart pounding. I looked at the actual woman on the corner. She was just a normal person, waiting for the light, completely unaware of the phantom that was tethered to her. I wanted to scream, to warn her, but I knew how it would sound. I would be the crazy man on the street corner, just as I had been the crazy man on the train. I stood there, frozen, for a long time, long after the woman and her spectral twin had crossed the street and disappeared. I understood now. The echo wasn't a ghost that haunted a place. It was a parasite that haunted people. It fed on something. Identity? Life force? What happened to the original office worker? Was he erased? Replaced? The question swirled in my head, a vortex of dread. I finally forced myself to move, to walk home, my feet feeling heavy as lead. When I got to my apartment, I walked into the bathroom and stared at my own reflection in the mirror. I stared for a long time, searching for any sign, any flicker of a delay. I raised my right hand. My reflection raised its left hand instantly. I nodded. It nodded back. There was no lag, no echo. But as I turned to leave, I caught a final glimpse of my reflection out of the corner of my eye. And for a split second, a single, heart-stopping, sanity-shattering instant, my reflection smiled back at me, a small, tight, unnatural smile, a smile that didn't reach his eyes, the same smile I had seen on the train. He hadn't taken the office worker's place. He had taken mine.